Bonjour tout le monde.
Good morning, everyone.
Depuis près de 3 semaines,
For nearly 3 weeks, our economy, our democracy, and the reputation of Canada throughout the world have been threatened consistently in a coordinated manner that has been receiving funding from abroad. This situation cannot be tolerated in our country, and it will no longer be.
Cabinet invoked the Emergencies Act to restore public order. Information is now being shared by law enforcement with Canada's financial institutions. Financial service providers have already taken action based on that information. The emergency measures we put in place are being used, they are having an impact, and they will have a growing impact in the days to come.
The measures we enacted include broadening the scope of Canadian rules to fight money laundering and terrorism financing so that it includes social financing platforms and various financial transaction institutions. It will also enable them to report suspicious and other activities to FINTRAC, and it will help put an end to this. It will require that financial institutions reassess their links with all persons involved in blockades and inform our national security organizations. It will also allow our institutions of the federal government, provincial and territorial governments as well, to communicate information to banks and financial services providers. This will enable them to put an end to funding and financing to unlawful blockades.
Since Monday's announcement, I've spoken directly with the heads of our major banks and with the director of FINTRAC. My cabinet colleagues and I are meeting regularly, very regularly, including with the commissioner of the RCMP, to discuss next steps. Our absolute priority is ending these illegal blockades and occupation. It gives me no pleasure to impose any of these measures. In fact, we do so with great sorrow. But do not doubt our determination to act, to defend our democracy, to defend our economy, and to restore peace, order, and good government. So let me repeat what I said on Monday. If your truck is being used in these protests, your corporate accounts will be frozen. The insurance on your vehicle will be suspended. The consequences are real, and they will bite. It is time for you to go home. And let me also be clear that we will have zero tolerance for the establishment of new blockades or occupations. We now have the tools to follow the money. We can see what is happening and what is being planned in real time. And we are absolutely determined that this must end, now and for good. Before turning to my colleagues, I want to make one additional but unrelated announcement, one that will be welcome news for cities across the country. The federal government will be providing a one-time $750 million top-up of transit funding for municipalities to help make up for some of the pandemic-related operating shortfalls that transit systems have been experiencing. This funding is contingent on two very reasonable requirements. First, that our provincial and territorial partners match the funding we, the federal government, will be providing. And second, that provinces work to speed up their actions to improve housing supply in collaboration with municipalities. Housing is a shared responsibility, and we all have an important role to play.
The federal government will provide to municipalities $750 million as a top-up for funding transit systems. This funding will help public transit systems with some of the shortfalls caused by the pandemic. Public transit plays a large role in improving living conditions in our communities. We must ensure that our municipalities are able to face the economic repercussions that are ongoing from the pandemic. Thank you very much. And I'll now give the floor to the Minister, Marco Mendicino.
Good thing they brought this step for you, Bill. Good morning, bon matin. Thank you for joining us today. I want to begin by highlighting two important developments that happened late yesterday. Last night in the House of Commons, I officially tabled a motion for confirmation of the emergency declaration under the Emergencies Act. And just a few minutes ago, I spoke to this motion during the debate. Over the next few days, I look forward to a very vigorous exchange with members of all parties at this important and unique moment. Along with the Prime Minister and my ministerial colleagues, we will be explaining to Canadians how we got to this point, why the Emergencies Act is necessary, and where we go from here. As always, we will explain clearly and openly how we're acting in the best interests of Canadians. As well, yesterday afternoon, I can confirm that the Emerson border crossing officially reopened. Emerson is Manitoba's most important link to the United States, a vital crossing point for travelers and trade. And with this significant step, I'm pleased to share that all ports of entry on the Canada-US border are now clear of illegal blockades and open to traffic. But I also want to add that this progress is not set in stone, and nor should we assume that it is linear. Yesterday, we saw a group of illegal blockades attempt to return to the Ambassador Bridge to once again choke this vital trade corridor off, and the impact that that would have had not only in southwestern Ontario, but right across the country cannot be overstated. And it can't be allowed to happen. And that's exactly why we invoked the Emergencies Act. Law enforcement must have all of the tools that they need to ensure that these crossings stay open. But I want to be clear that the very targeted tools that we've introduced under the Emergencies Act are time limited, and they are protected by the safeguards which are enshrined in our charter. This means that whether you are a law enforcement, a person, or any other individual that is assisting under the Emergencies Act, that you are bound to act in compliance with the charter. Every day, some $50 million in trade passes through the Coots Crossing. And at the Ambassador Bridge, it's nearly $400 million. It's no exaggeration to say that these illegal blockades have already cost our economy in the billions. But these aren't just numbers, they're jobs for Canadians. It's about the rancher near Lethbridge who sells Alberta beef to hungry families in the United States, or the auto worker at the Chrysler plant in Windsor who builds cars for markets across North America. We owe it to them and to all Canadians to ensure that these vital corridors remain open for business. Au cœur de ce mouvement se trouve la colère, l'animosité.
At the heart of this movement are anger, animosity, and too many cases, weapons. We can see that at our borders, before our legislatures, and in our communities. We have to be clear-eyed about what's happening.
It is no ordinary law, but we know that we are in no ordinary time. As former Minister Perrin Beatty said when introducing it in 1988, the Emergencies Act is, quote, an ability to enable the federal government to fulfill its constitutional responsibility to provide for safety and security of Canadians during national emergencies. Keeping Canadians safe is a responsibility that we take very seriously, and it is one that we will fulfill. Thank you. Merci. And I'll pass it over to my friend and colleague, Minister Blair.
Thank you very much, Marco, and Deputy Prime Minister. Always an honor and privilege to be with you. Good morning, everyone. Bon matin tout le monde. I'd like to thank you all for joining us here today to enable us and give us the opportunity to provide an impact and to answer Canadians' important questions on this matter. As my colleagues have said, currently all of our ports of entry with the United States are open. Trades and goods and people are once again moving freely. Travelers and commercial vehicles are getting where they need to go, unimpeded by illegal blockades. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our law enforcement partners for safely and successfully clearing these vital passages in British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario over the past few days. And while we all breathe a sigh of relief, as has Mr. Mendicino shared with you, we know that these blockades could very easily reappear. And as we saw yesterday, as evidenced in Windsor, the intent to harm our economy and hurt Canadians unfortunately remains. I'd like to thank local law enforcement for their swift action in Windsor in preventing another illegal blockade from fracturing the critical economic recovery of this country. The removal of these blockades has restored the strength of our economy. They've ensured that the safe and free passage of goods between Canada and the United States is secure. And most importantly, they have made sure that Canadians are able to get back to work and get their lives back to normal. In Ottawa, we're continuing to see progress being made by the Ottawa Police Service, the Ontario Police, Provincial Police, and the RCMP and all of their policing partners as they work to end the occupation of Wellington Street and downtown Ottawa. Yesterday, Interim Chief Bell stated that officers have been going from truck to truck to advise individuals that they are participating in an illegal demonstration, and they have made it crystal clear that if the illegal demonstrators do not leave, they will face serious consequences. Interim Chief Bell has also confirmed that he is confident that the Ottawa Police Service and the Integrated Command Unit have the appropriate resources, authorities that they require, and a very concrete plan to move forward. He emphasized that this operation will not be considered complete until the streets are cleared, and that peace and order has been fully restored to the good people of the City of Ottawa. To the individuals who continue to participate in this illegal occupation, it's time to go home now. And to those who have children with them, this is no place for children. Take them home immediately. Take them to a place of safety. The Ottawa Police Service and their partners have engaged a planning team with the Children's Aid Society to encourage anyone with children in the area to leave immediately and to take their kids to someplace safe. To the people of Ottawa, I want to assure you, we will continue to work and support with our municipal and provincial partners to make sure that this occupation ends safely and swiftly and respectful of charter and rights and freedoms and upholding the rule of law so that they can get their city back and they can get their lives back. The decision to invoke the Emergency Act was one, as the Deputy Prime Minister has said, that we took with great caution and care. And I will share with you as she did. We approached it even with sincere regret. Regret that this was necessary. But make no mistake, we were resolved to do what was required to uphold the rule of law, to protect Canadians' interests, and to defend our country, our democratic institutions, and the people of this country. We know that it was necessary to give law enforcement and our other officials the tools, authorities, and resources that they require to do the job. And I want to assure all Canadians, we will not hesitate to do whatever is required to protect our ports of entry, to protect Canadian interests from the criminal intent of people behind these blockades, and to restore peace and order in our country. And finally, to the people and residents of Ottawa, I want to acknowledge how they have suffered from threats and intimidation, from acts that were clearly intended to bring the greatest disruption to the lives of their fellow citizens, and indeed all Canadians. I want to assure them that this will end, and that we will be there for them, to continue to support them, and to hold those who have taken from them the peace of their neighborhoods and their communities. We will hold them to account for their actions. Thank you all very much. Merci beaucoup. I would like to invite people who may have questions of myself and my colleagues. Please proceed.
Merci. On va maintenant prendre les questions des journalistes.
Thank you. We'll be taking journalist questions until 11:55.
We'll take questions from journalists until 11:55, and we'll start in the room.
Hi, it's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. My question is for you, Minister Freeland. You mentioned in your opening remarks that action is being taken by financial services and that's making a difference. I'm wondering if you can provide any specific numbers on how many accounts, either personal or corporate, are being targeted, and also what type of safeguards are in place to ensure that it's protesters and not simply someone with the same name whose accounts are being targeted and frozen.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I have those numbers here in front of me, and they were reviewed just last night by me and Minister Mendicino, Minister Blair, the Prime Minister, and Minister Lametti. But I'm not going to share them with you right now because operational actions are being taken, and we want to be very, very careful not to jeopardize those operational actions. But I do want to assure you, and through you all Canadians, that action is being taken. We are seeing it, and that action is going to increase in the coming days. It's a good question about what are the safeguards, and there I really want to assure all Canadians that that is something very much on our minds. That is something that we and law enforcement and the financial service providers have been working on very, very carefully. And that's why I say the use of the financial tools is actually going to increase in the coming days because it was important for us to be sure that safeguards were in place. And I do also want to say that the actions we have taken are emergency measures. Due process remains in place. Charter rights remain in place. And of course, the courts are there, and these will all be institutions that will be there to support Canadians.
Okay, so my follow-up is in two parts then. So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information. And the actual follow-up is, I'm just wondering whether the bank accounts will be targeted of individuals who donated to the Give, Send, Go and the GoFundMe campaigns. Are they considered designated people under the Emergencies Act, meaning that their credit cards could be cut and financial services are targeting them as well? Okay,
so the names of both individuals and entities, as well as crypto wallets, have been shared by the RCMP with financial institutions, and accounts have been frozen, and more accounts will be frozen. Crowdfunding platforms and payment service providers have started the registration process with FinTrack. In terms of the specifics on whose accounts are being frozen, you now have the regulations. The financial service providers have those regulations as well, and they, working with law enforcement, will be making the operational decisions. But I do want to say really clearly to Canadians, we have now outlined with great clarity that these blockades and occupations are illegal. It is now time for people to go home, to take their trucks home, and to stop funding illegal blockades and occupations.
Yes, Alex Ballingal with the Toronto Star. Just on the same subject, the warning that you're issuing to the drivers about their accounts being suspended and their truck insurance being suspended, is pretty unequivocal. So I'm wondering if you can say or shed some light on whether to what degree, I guess, the large financial institutions are actually on board with this, and also clarify exactly why you can't share the figures, why that's an operational secret at this point.
The Emergencies Act has compelled financial service providers to take these actions, and we have provided them with immunity for actions undertaken in good faith under these measures. Those are two important facts. The financial service providers have a stake in Canada and the Canadian economy, and they are a really important institutional pillar of Canada. They are, as they are legally obliged to do, collaborating properly and effectively with the RCMP, with law enforcement. In terms of disclosing specifics, all of us had a conversation yesterday with law enforcement about that, and there was a clear view that it's important right now not to in any way jeopardize the very important work law enforcement is taking. And that's why I'm not disclosing the specifics, but let me assure you, those details will be disclosed in due course and soon. And I want you to know it is happening. I do have the numbers in front of me. And I do particularly want people who are participating in illegal blockades and in illegal occupation to know these measures are real. They are being used. They will have an impact. And there is a really easy way to avoid being affected by these measures. And that is just go home, go back to work.
And I think that Minister Mendicino, you mentioned that all the border crossings that have been blockaded are cleared. There's been attempts, I guess, to re-blockade them, and that's been part of the justification you guys have used for the Emergencies Act. But you've also mentioned that you want to lift this emergency declaration before the 30-day limit is up. So if the concern is them returning, what are the conditions you need to see, I guess, as a government, as a cabinet, in order to actually lift this emergency declaration?
Well, first and foremost, one of the conditions is that the blockades are no longer there. And that is one of the reasons why we have been going to great pains over the last number of days to send a very clear, unequivocal message to those who are participating in them, be they at a border or in front of a legislature, including here in Ottawa in front of the Parliament, but equally in the communities and in the neighborhoods where these are no longer just mere disturbances of the peace, where there has been a rampant and flagrant disregard for the law. The time is now to stop and to go home. And you've heard me say it, you've heard Minister Blair say it, you've heard the Deputy Prime Minister say it, you've heard the Prime Minister say it, you've heard yesterday the interim Ottawa Police Chief say it. There should be no ambiguity right now to anyone that is still participating in an illegal blockade, whether it's for some misguided belief that this is a lawful protest when it is not, or for some other more malevolent purpose. The time is to go home. And the invocation of the Emergencies Act is a resort that we came to as a result of the significant challenges that law enforcement using conventional tools had faced for the last 3 weeks. And while we have made progress, while we see that the ports of entry are open right now, I would suggest that at this fragile moment, it's precarious. I mean, yesterday you just heard Mayor Drew Dilkins in the course of a press conference say that there was yet another effort to try and shut it down again. And so, yes, I mean, I think we all want to be cautiously optimistic that we are coming to the end of it. But in the meantime, as a government, we have an obligation and a responsibility to Canadians to make sure that we are using all of the tools in the box. And yes, that includes declaring certain areas as no-go zones. That includes the ability to commandeer the kind of assets that are required to preserve the flow of traffic at our critical infrastructure, including at our borders. That includes choking off proceeds, currencies that may be used to advance the illegal blockade. And in the case of the RCMP, that includes using a very important and time-limited measure to be able to rapidly deploy them so that we can ensure that there is public safety. So, you know, we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. And obviously, it is our desire to see the measures that we have introduced under the order sunset as quickly as possible. But that will be a decision that is taken, again, very carefully on the advice of our officials, on the advice of law enforcement, and what we're seeing and hearing on the ground.
Thanks. We'll take one more question in the room and then take questions from the phone. Une autre question dans la salle, ensuite les questions par téléphone.
Oui, bonjour, Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada.
Hello,
Ma question
Laurence
est pour vous,
Martin
Madame
from
Freeland.
Radio-Canada. Question for Ms. Freeland.
Oui, il n'y a pas de problème, prenez votre temps.
Yeah, take your time, no problem.
Sur les comptes gelés,
On the frozen accounts, the bank accounts
gelés,
that have
je
been
comprends que vous ne
frozen,
pouvez pas nous
I
donner
understand that
de
you
noms
can't give us
précis ou de chiffres
the
précis, mais est-ce que
specific
vous pouvez nous donner au
numbers,
moins un ordre de
but
grandeur?
could
Est-ce qu'on
you
parle
give
de
us
quelques
an
dizaines
idea?
de
Are we
comptes, quelques
talking
centaines
about
de
a few
comptes qui ont
dozen,
été
a few
gelés jusqu'à
hundred
maintenant?
accounts that have been frozen so far?
Aujourd'hui, on a pris la décision
For today, we made the decision
après une discussion
following
avec
discussions
les gens qui ont la
with
responsabilité
people who have the operational responsibilities to implement
ces mesures,
these
que ce n'est
measures,
pas le moment
that
de parler,
this would not be the time
parler avec les Canadiens concernant les détails
have this discussion
d'accomptes gelés. Mais je peux vous
regarding the
assurer
number of frozen accounts,
qu'il y a
but I can assure
jusqu'à ce
you
moment
that
des accounts
to
qui
this
sont
point,
gelés.
there have been
C'est un processus
accounts that have been frozen.
continuel.
It is an ongoing
C'est un
process.
processus qui va
It's a
s'accélérer
process that will
si
accelerate
les
and be stepped up
blocages,
if the
si
blockades
l'occupation continue.
and the occupations continue.
Vous dites aussi qu'il y a des
Question.
éléments
You are also
extrémistes
saying that there are
violents
extremist,
dans
violent
ce
extremist
mouvement de
elements in
barricade, de
these
blocage au pays.
blockade
Quelle preuve concrète est-ce que
movements.
vous avez de
What
ça que vous pouvez partager
specific
avec nous?
concrete data do you have on that you could share with us? Answer.
C'est l'information que
It's
les policiers
information that the
ont
police
trouvé.
services have found.
En Alberta, à
In
Coutts,
Alberta,
ils
in
ont
Coutts,
déjà
they
parlé
already
des détails. Ils
talked
ont
about what
des
those
autres
details are.
détails
They have more
qui
details
seront
that will
relevés
be
par les
made
policiers
public
du pays.
by police
Mais
forces throughout the country.
comme le ministre Mendicino
But
a
as
dit,
Minister Mendicino stated,
nous comprenons
we
que
understand
peut-être il y a des gens
that there may be
qui n'ont
people
pas compris
who
que ce
did
sont
not
des blocages, des occupations
get the message that
illégaux.
these are
Et nous
illegal,
voulons dire à ces
unlawful
gens
blockades and occupations.
c'est
We
le
want to
moment
tell those people
de
that it's time.
revenir à la maison.
It's time to go
Mais
home.
c'est important aussi pour
But
les
it's also
Canadiens et les
important for
Canadiennes de
Canadians
comprendre
to understand
qu'il y a aussi
that
des éléments
there are
organisés
organized
des groupes
elements
extrémistes
from extremist
qui font
groups
part de
that
ce qui se passe au
are
Canada.
part of
Et
what's
notre
happening right now.
gouvernement ne
Our
permettra
government
à
will
ces
not
éléments
allow these
de
elements to
continuer
continue
de menacer
to
nos
threaten
institutions
our
économiques,
economic
nos institutions démocratiques
institutions or
et notre
democratic
économie.
institutions and our economy.
Merci. On va maintenant prendre une
Thank you.
question
We'll
par
take a
téléphone,
question
ensuite
by
une
phone,
dernière
and
question
then
dans la
one
salle.
last
We'll
one in
take
the
one more
room.
question on the phone, and then a last question in the room. Opérateur, question, s'il vous plaît.
Operator, question,
Thank you.
please.
Merci. For questions over the phone, please press star 1 on the device's keypad. Pour les questions au téléphone, faites étoile 1 sur votre appareil. La première question nous vient de Émilie Bergeron,
The
la
first
presse
question is from
canadienne.
Émilie
À vous la
Bergeron,
parole.
La Presse Canadienne. You have the floor.
Oui, bonjour. Une
Question.
question pour
Yes,
Madame
hello.
Freeland ou
This is a
peut-être
question for Ms.
Monsieur
Freeland
Mendicino.
or Mr.
En
Mendicino.
fait, c'est plutôt sur le débat qui a lieu en ce moment à la
This
Chambre des
is
communes.
more about the
le
debate
débat
happening
sur
at
la
the House of
ratification
Commons
de la loi
on the
sur les mesures
ratification
d'urgence.
on the
On
Emergencies
sent en vous
Act.
écoutant là, dans le point de presse ici que
We
vous avez
we
quand même
feel
un sentiment
listening to
d'urgence
hear
parce
that
que
you do feel like there's some urgency in having this being adopted quickly in the House. What would a reasonable time frame be, one that is fair and sufficient, and when would you want to see the vote on the motion?
Okay, merci pour la
Answer.
question.
Thank you
Je
for
vais
this
commencer,
question.
après ça, je vais passer la
I'm going to
parole au
start
ministre Mendicino.
answering, and then I'll give the floor to Minister Mendicino.
Et pour commencer, je veux
To
seulement
start,
dire
I will simply say
qu'un élément
that one
important
of the
de
key
ces
elements
mesures
in
d'urgence,
these emergency
c'est le
measures
scrutin dans
is
la Chambre des communes.
the vote in the House of
Nous avons
Commons.
utilisé des pouvoirs
We
qui
used
existent
existing
maintenant au
powers
Canada, des
currently
pouvoirs
existing in
complètement
Canada.
légaux,
They are completely
complètement
legal
constitutionnels.
and completely
Et pour
constitutional.
nous, l'élément
For
de la
us,
participation de la Chambre des communes,
the
d'un
element
débat
of
aux
ensuring
chambres des
that
communes et
there's a
d'un
debate
vote
at the
aux
House of
chambres des
Commons,
communes,
that the House of Commons participate, that it
absolument
votes
essentiel.
on this
Notre
is
but aujourd'hui, c'est
completely
de
essential.
protéger
Our goal
les
today is to
institutions
protect
démocratiques
the
du Canada.
democratic institutions
Et
of
on
Canada,
va procéder
and
dans
we will
une
proceed
manière absolument démocratique,
in an absolutely democratic
absolument
fashion
fidèle à la loi.
that
Et
absolutely
maintenant, je vais passer la parole au
respects the
ministre
law.
Mendicino.
And now I'll give the floor to Minister Mendicino.
Merci, mais je pense que la ministre
Minister
Freeland
Mendicino.
a bien expliqué
Answer.
le processus et la manière
Thank you, but I think
de le ton de le débat
Minister
que le
Freeland
gouvernement veut pendant les
clearly
prochaines
explained
quelques
what
journées.
the process is
Pour
and
moi,
what we want to
c'est
see over
très
the next few
important
days. In my opinion, it's very
de
important
participer dans un débat qui
to take part
est
in a
juste, qui est
debate that is
équilibré
fair
et qui est
and that is
transparent.
balanced and
Il faut
transparent.
expliquer à les
need to
Canadiennes et les
explain
Canadiennes
to Canadians
toutes les raisons
all the
qu'on a
reasons
besoin
why we need
de prendre cette
put
dernier recours.
this
C'est pas
measure of
facile.
last resort in place. It is
C'est
not
un
an
moment
easy
très
decision.
lourd pour tout le monde.
It is a very
Mais les
delicate
mesures qui
situation
sont
for everybody.
incluses dans les
But the
déclarations,
measures
dans
that
les
are
ordres,
included in
est
the
nécessaire
declaration
dans
and in the
l'avis
order
de
are
le gouvernement.
necessary.
C'est nécessaire pour
In the
les forces
government's
policières pour prendre l'action
opinion. It is,
rapide,
they are necessary for police
rapidement,
services
mais
to be able to take
dans une manière
action quickly in a way
qui respecte le charte, tous les
that
préceptes et les
respects
droits
all the rights
dans la
and
charte.
freedoms
Donc,
protected under the
j'espère
charter.
que les débats vont
I hope the
démontrer
debates
toutes les raisons, toutes les
will
explications du gouvernement
demonstrate
pour les Canadiennes et les
and put
Canadiens.
forward all those reasons that the government has to Canadians.
D'accord. En suivi,
Question.
ma question c'était
Thank you.
plutôt
So,
à quel moment
as a
vous
follow-up,
souhaitez que la
my
Chambre
question was more,
vote
when
exactement?
would you
Donc, je vais
want to
reposer
see
la
the
même
House
question
move to a
plus
vote on
directement.
this? So I'll
À
ask the
quel
same
moment
question more
est-ce que
directly.
vous souhaitez que le
When
vote
do you
se
want to
produise?
see
Est-ce que vous
the
souhaitez
vote on
à
this?
tout prix, par exemple,
Do
que
you
ça
want
se
it
produise
to
avant que la
happen
Chambre ajourne
before
demain,
the House
vendredi?
adjourns tomorrow, which is
Et
Friday?
pour le Sénat,
And
rapidement,
for the
parce que c'était
Senate,
ça ma
quickly,
relance,
because
le
that was
Sénat, donc, va
that was
siéger
going to be
demain.
my follow-up.
Est-ce que, à quel
The
moment
Senate
vous
will be
envisagez que le Sénat
sitting
sera
tomorrow.
en mesure de voter lui aussi
When
une fois
do
que
you
la
think
motion aura été débattue là-bas?
the Senate will be able
Sur
to
la
vote
dernière
on
question,
this once it has been
je sais
debated
pas, nous ne
there?
savons pas exactement
For that
quand
second
les
point,
menaces, quand les
for that
blockades
second
vont,
point, we do not
vont,
know.
terminer, mais tout le monde espère
We are
le
not
plus
sure
vite
when
possible.
all the discussions
Hier.
will end,
Mais,
but we
mais
all
sur
wanted
la
to
première
happen quickly
question, c'est une
yesterday.
question très technique
But for your
sur
second,
le
your
processus
first question
de la loi de mesures
regarding
d'urgence. Et
the Emergencies Act, it's a technical question. It's a question that
le chef dans la Chambre vont discuter avec tous les autres
House
chefs
leader
de les oppositions.
will be discussing with other House
Merci
leaders
beaucoup.
in the
Et
House.
dernière question, Marie, allez-y.
Thank you very much. Last question, Maria, go ahead.
Au micro, je pense que c'est pour vous.
Avec plaisir.
Vous insinuez depuis des jours
Question.
qu'il y
You've
a
been insinuating
des
for
armes
days
à Ottawa
that
comme il y
there
en
are
a,
weapons that were brought to Ottawa
comme on en
or
a
that are in
trouvé à Coutts
Ottawa
en Alberta.
as
Pouvez-vous nous
were
confirmer
found in Coutts
ici,
in Alberta? Could you
plutôt que de faire
confirm
des insinuations comme vous le faites depuis des
here,
jours, quel est
rather
le plan
than
pour
insinuating
éviter
as you have been
qu'elles soient
doing for days,
utilisées
what are the
quand il y aura
plans
une
to
intervention, là, qui
ensure that
visiblement
they
se
won't be
prépare?
used
Puis pourquoi est-ce qu'elles ont pu
at the time of an
rester
intervention, as
au
we're
centre-ville
seeing
d'Ottawa
being
pendant
prepared,
3 semaines,
and
ces
how
dames-là?
did those weapons stay in Ottawa for 3 weeks, in downtown Ottawa for 3 weeks?
Important précis, je n'ai pas dit qu'il y a des intelligences ou des informations qu'il y a des armes à feu au Ottawa.
Clarification. I'm not saying that there is intelligence saying that there are weapons in Ottawa.
Très important.
Inaudible. Question inaudible to the interpreter.
Je viens de dire
Answer. No, it's an important point. As I said yesterday, and even my colleagues said that there are public reports showing that there are indications
idéologique
that there's extremist ideological positions.
Les blockades.
And there's that link between the blockades.
Des similarités,
there are similarities
de les cibles, par exemple, les frontières,
of what is being targeted, for example, border crossings, legislators,
et plusieurs des autres infrastructures critiques,
many other critical infrastructure elements.
Mettent leur focus sur.
That's what the blockades are focusing on. There are similarities between the tactics that those groups are that are being used by those groups at the border and here in Ottawa.
Avant le Parlement. Et
before
il y a
Parliament.
Une similarité de la rhétorique.
And there's a similarity in the rhetoric
le social media et partout.
Emerging in
Donc,
social media
ça,
and elsewhere.
Que tout le monde,
those are similarities that everybody
partage une inquiétude sur.
Is sharing concerns about.
Vous me dites ici, là, au micro,
Question.
qu'il n'y a pas
So here you're telling me that there are no weapons in Ottawa.
Ma question suivie,
Okay.
That wasn't my follow-up question. My follow-up question was about the children who are in downtown Ottawa. You keep asking for them to leave. They're not leaving. Some people, protesters, are calling for more children to come so that the police will be impeded in their action. Clearly, your calls for them to go home are not being heeded. So what is being looked at? Answer. First, regarding the firearms and all the risks, that's a question for the police services. There's a difference between our different functions. Here at government, it is to create legislation, to enact it, to give police services tools, and it is their responsibility to use those tools to respond to those questions on the ground regarding risks related to firearms and so on. Now, as for children,
qui est très sérieux.
That's a very serious question.
Nous partageons une inquiétude.
We all share the concerns
qu'il faut que les enfants quittent maintenant.
The children must leave
ça,
now.
C'est la raison que tout le monde sur le côté du gouvernement, même
and
les
that's why
policiers
everybody, the police services at the government side, are saying clearly,
très fort,
very clearly,
il faut partir.
We're emphasizing that they need to go. The kids need to go now.
Ouais, mais ils partent pas.
Oh, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you're done? Okay.
Unfortunately, we really have to cut it off. They have to get going.
I think we're joining Minister Blair for the debate, but we'll be happy to take more questions later. Thank you very much.
Merci. Ceci conclut la conférence de presse.
This concludes the press conference.